Hi, everyone. Just making sure everybody can hear me. So if you can't, let me know, and I'm just going to jump right into today's presentation. So it's called Transitioning from Coursework to Capstone Writing. And what I saw on the poll is that all of you are in the right place. You're here towards the beginning of this process or right at the start of this process so that you can um, use your self-efficacy and move forward with some confidence in this process because it is a process, right? We're running a marathon. We're going to talk about this marathon and what you need out of the gates. So let's move forward. Anyhow, my name is Dr. Bright, Dr. Vanya Bright, my PhD from the University of Minnesota in sociology. I'm also contributing faculty in the Public Policy and Administration Department, but my main job here is to work in the Writing Center as a form and style editor. I've looked at 3 years worth of dissertations, meaning about 3 dissertations a year for 3 years, and I edit them for form and style at the very end. So I see dissertations from all the various doctoral programs at Walden, and I absolutely love my job. One of my favorite things is talking about writing, though, and helping students get from point A to point B. Um, to point C to point Z, the end, right? Where you can call yourself a doctor. We've got some learning objectives today. One is understand how the doctoral capstone fits into the context of your doctoral degree program. Going from student to scholar is a big deal. It's a change, and we're going to talk about that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is how do I get that? Okay, is identifying writing strategies for transitioning from coursework to capstone. This is a different thing you're going to be writing now. And so we need to talk about that different thing and then talk about how you're going to start writing that different thing. What are your expectations? What can you expect? What can you plan for, etc. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is we're going to spend some time looking at the Writing Center resources that we have for you, as well as some resources that are outside of the Writing Center, so that hopefully, as you start moving through this process, you do retain, take these slides down from the Files Pod, take that other document down from the Files Pod, because it's tons of resources that you can use going forward. One of the biggest parts of this process is figuring out how to do it on your own. You have help. You have help from your committee. You have help from the Writing Center. You have help from the IRB. You have tons of help, but really you're driving this ship or whatever we want to call it at this point. So we're breaking it down again because we have those 3 objectives. This session is broken down into 3 parts. First, moving from student to scholar. Second, writing a dissertation or a doctoral study. How do you do it? So first of all, what's the process like? Second of all, how do you do it? And third, what sorts of links are available? What sorts of, not links, but what sorts of resources are available, including those links that can get you straight to that resource. So that's what we'll be doing today. So the first thing I want to know, let's do a quick chat question. Um, what do you need to know? Looking ahead, what are your main concerns about finishing your dissertation or doctoral project study? When you think about you got to finish, what are your concerns? Do you have any? We had lovely music while we were waiting for this to start. I promise I will not start singing. Finding data, knowing what the expectations are, staying focused and positive. These are wonderful. The difference between regular paper assignment and other than more pages, yeah. Strong yes. Oh, that problem statement. Having the stamina to finish. You've got it, but we'll talk about it. Finding data, affirming my team, start. Wow, you guys are awesome. Starting my writing and staying focused. You're going faster than I can read. I'm just going to keep going because it's going down pretty fast, but you're hitting all the main points. Doing the exhaustive review, yes. Framing the problem, staying focused, getting the prospectus right. Um, your methodology, qualitative or quant, understanding alignment. That's such a big one, isn't it? Finding enough peer-reviewed articles, you will, and the library will help you find it. But we'll talk about how to do that. The length of time until completion. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. That's a big one, Bonnie. Um, Want to finish my doctoral study early? Yeah, I've got a story. Maybe if there's time, there might not be. I can tell it. Problem statement and writing, difference between master's thesis and doctoral writing. There is a difference. We'll talk about that. Alignment, evidence gathering, ensuring that I'm providing adequate information, dissertation, doctoral level reading, making sure that if this is rigorous work, right? You want to be proud of the thing. You're earning that moniker. You're earning doctor. So what? Yeah, exactly. Um, I opened the floodgate. You're right, Robert. Evidence gathering, sample size, moving from APA 6 to 7th. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, writing the correct form and style, writing. Yeah, perfect. You know what? I am going to close this down. Tons of main concerns. Hold them. Okay. If you didn't get your main concern written out before it got closed down, hold that in you because we're going to come back and talk again. We're going to chat again. I want to see if we deal with this and then to make sure that everyone knows that they have the support that they need to do this. That is, to me, one of the wonderful things about the Writing Center at Walden is that there are about 20 editors dedicated via a variety of resources to help you with that final document, which is such a bear and it's such a beauty when it's done. So let's move on. Let's see if I cover most of your stuff. If I don't, we're coming back to what didn't we cover because I bet we've got something for you. So first of all, step one, moving from student to scholar. Things are about to change, right? If you have already moved out of coursework, you might be starting to realize that. If you're still in coursework, it might not totally be clear. And here's the difference. And we've already kind of tapped on this in the chat, right? For US style doctoral programs, there's generally two stages. The first one is the coursework, and the second is what we call the capstone. So if I refer to the capstone, I'm talking about your dissertation, but not everybody on this, everybody listening to this is writing a dissertation. Some are writing a doctoral study, which might be separated by sections versus chapters, or a project study. So depending on your program, you'll be doing one of those things. But whatever it is a large original piece of research that is the capstone to your entire doctoral program, right? So sometimes I call it the capstone, sometimes I call it the dissertation, whatever I call it, I'm referring to that final document. So with that final document, keep in mind you may have very little, perhaps even no experience conducting an original research project of this size. I know I didn't, and I didn't know where to begin, and I didn't know when I was done. So it is nice to be able to have situations like this where you can start thinking about, okay, what does this second part of this process look like? If with your coursework, you have tons of experience. Since you were in primary school, you have been learning how to be a student in a course. It's a lot different now that you are outside of courses. Let's look a little bit more about what that difference looks like. Writing for courses, you've got a really, really limited scope and breadth in that focus, right? Someone gives you a paper assignment and says, um, uh, write about this, or choose a topic, but then write about this. So you have someone tells you what to write about, and you're writing for one person, right? Restricted audience. Um, when you're writing for courses, your feedback is going to be, you're going to get a grade. Someone's going to say how well you did on this. You get some sort of final assessment. You might get some suggestions for how to improve for the next assignment, but generally you don't go back and make it better and better and better and better and better until it is an A. And that's kind of what the doctoral with the capstone process is you don't finish till it's an A, right? And so and I want us to get out of grade mindset, but at the same time, I think it's kind of a useful idea to think of here, is that when you're writing a paper, you're going to get a grade, you're going to move on. And then with the draft and revision ratio, when you're writing a course paper, you're going to have maybe a draft or two, maybe one draft, a bunch of revisions, but it's limited. That revision and draft ratio is incredibly limited. Now, let's look at writing original doctoral research. Focus changes, right? It's self-determined. Uh, Figuring out, writing that prospectus and getting the alignment in that prospectus, simple, like just a couple pages, can take such a long time. That alignment piece is so difficult. And where do you start? Some people start from a question. Some people can't ask a question until they know what kind of data they can get. So so that it's a really so it's a process that is self-determined. It is guided by committee input, but it's self-determined. Your focus, it's going to be original work. It's going to be for a broad scholarly audience. It's no longer for your professor. It's for you're going to hopefully get this published. And then there's contribution to existing research on the topic. So in addition to having it be self-determined, you also have to know what everybody else has written on your topic before you really know what you're going to do your research on in your topic. If possible, make sure that your work on your lit review is one of the first things you do when you are working on your prospectus and proposal, because that is what informs everything else, is what people have done before you. When you're writing original doctoral research, your feedback and evaluation, consider this. With the paper, you get a grade, you're done, you move on. With this, you're going to have multiple rounds of feedback at each stage. So your prospectus is going to go back, forth, back, forth. You can put your heart and soul into a document, send it off to your chair, and they're going to say, oh, this, here's a hole, here's a hole. The idea is that you will be, by receiving so much feedback, you are creating something that is heavily rigorous.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. We are waiting to see if we can get Vanya back here, and we apologize. Um, I wonder, in the meantime, if you all have any questions so far about what Vanya's been discussing, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A box. I wondered, Megan, there was a question from one student asking about
Yes, I can
riffing. In
certainly
other
speak to
words,
that. Yeah,
she's
Robert, I saw that. Yeah, you're correct. Is to not take it personally. It is one of those things that when you're not getting feedback face to face, that I'm sure is depending where you are in your program, you're either still getting used to or you've gotten used to kind of having to only read feedback, which sometimes tone is really hard to be sure on. But there's always going to be feedback. There is no such thing as a perfect document. So certainly don't take it personally. Always ask questions if you're not sure if what is, your someone on your committee is asking about. Um, you know, but it's going to be completely natural to get feedback and react to it. Do always kind of, if you feel yourself doing that, take a deep breath, step away, make sure it's not 3 in the morning, and then, come back and, look at it again and then go, okay. Um, and some of the, aspects of completing this doctoral program is you're still having to abide by not only university rules but your the faculty guidance and things of there are things that you have to include that you're never going to see in a journal publication, but that's because this is part of your degree program. So keep in mind, if you're told no, you can't do this or this isn't really fitting, it doesn't mean you can never do it. It's just going to be something that doesn't work for what you're doing right now, which is completing this doctoral program. Once you've graduated, that actually opens up the door for a lot different, more different kinds of research. Um, let's see. Let's see. I'm looking at the questions that we've got here. About, let's see. I can pull this over. Yeah, it's wanting to see if you can get understanding, the feedback on both sides. If there seem to be issues with second committee member and the chair not agreeing, try to step out of that, back from that. If it gets really problematic, certainly reach out to, you know, your student success advisor and go, hey, who can I talk to? Things are not going well. If it's, generally that doesn't happen too often, but a lot of people, um, having people on your committee, it's, that you're familiar with, it can be good and it can be bad. Generally, if it's someone that shares similar interests or that you had a really good rapport for, that's, going to be useful. You know, Otherwise, there's going to be a little learning curve getting if you're not someone you're not familiar with. Certainly, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Selection of the topic. As you kind of progress through, there'll be the point where you're, reaching the proposal or prospectus stage, and that's really when it starts. But certainly, if things come to you through your coursework about what ideas, something that really engages you, or something you're really interested in, write that down. Keep track of that, because those ideas can strike at any time. And you'll want to be able to, kind of keep that in mind. If it's something where you come across, a theory or something that you find really interesting, that's something to keep in mind as well. Is of like, hey, I
Megan, it
Yes,
looks
I
like we might
can
have
hear
Vanya
you.
back, so let me check in. Vanya, can you hear us?
Am I saying things twice?
Okay, wonderful. That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you? No, you're not, and I will try to take care of that.
I think it's, yeah, Dr. Bright too. Okay. Yes. Okay. Hello, friends. I am so sorry about that. I spent about 8 hours yesterday trying to fix my computer with tech, and I thought I had it all fixed, but there's still some weird, funky things going on. So hopefully we're good going forward. And I'm just going to keep moving. It sounds like there were some questions being answered, and so I'm going to keep going. And we lost about 5 minutes. I'm sad about that. But I can get us right back on track, I promise. Okay, so writing the original doctoral research, it's going to be totally different because you are writing one document, dozens of drafts, hundreds of revisions, very different. So that means your mindset needs to change between being a student and now being a scholar. It's not always going to be an easy movement. It's not always going to be clear. Your chair and your committee members can help you with that. Part of it is just this thing that you go through in the next year and a half, 2 years as you work on this document. But it's not like, but it does take time. It does take honing. I like to give people this side by side, which is basically just the information that I provided in the last 2 slides. And so how to write for classes is the first column, and how to write for doctoral research is the second column. And it just really, you can see, all right, this is how it's going to be different now that I'm doing original doctoral research. This is how faculty feedback is going to look different. And this is the draft revision ratio. But I think key to this is understanding dozens of drafts, hundreds of revisions. So let's move on from that. Stages in the capstone process. So this is one of the first things to really keep in mind. You'll be doing a lot of writing, and all of this writing is going to turn into that final one document. Save everything. because oftentimes what I would do is I would write something and then I'd move on to something else and I'd start a new document. And then once I was writing up that final document, I would go what I call mining for gold. I would go looking for gold in some of the earlier stuff that I'd written, earlier portions of a lit review that I didn't wind up including at the time, but there's something important in there later, etc. So for each of these stages, you're going to have documents that you write. The first one is, of course, the prospectus, and that's going to have some elements of the background info or chapter 1 in the dissertation. It's different for other doctoral studies. The proposal then, so the prospectus is where you get the basics down. This is what you're going to study. This is the problem. This is the purpose of the study. This is why it's important. A small lit review. And then these are the methods you're going to use. And that's where you work really closely with your chair to determine, do I have alignment, et cetera. And the way that process generally goes is you write something, you send it off, and then they look at it and they say, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then you have to go back in and grapple with these deep questions and hone your prospectus even more. So that's the prospectus stage. There's also the proposal stage. The proposal stage, if you're writing a dissertation, it's the background info, the literature review, and the methods. So whether that's chapters 1, 2, and 3 of the dissertation, or sometimes that's sections 1 and 2 of a doctoral study, it just depends on your program. But the proposal stage then is where you are putting together something that you can present to Walden, to your committee, to Walden, and to the IRB to say, I have thought through everything to sorry, now my dog is barking. I'm flustered already. Anyhow, the proposal is where you've thought through everything, including background info, literature review, methods, and you say, this is how I'm going to do this study. This is the problem, and this is exactly how I'm going to study it. Now, lit review is a key component, right? Because that is where you get what everybody else has done prior to you. The final study then is where you take those first 3 chapters. You're going to be tweaking them a little bit as you move into your final bit, and then you're going to add your findings and your analysis. So it's all one document that is that slowly morphs into this final study, right? Your prospectus morphs into your proposal morphs into your final study. So this is just more guidance on how this is just one paper, right? That will be with you for a good long time as you continue to hone it. So there are stages in the process. Plan ahead, but don't get ahead of yourself is one of the big things that I would say at the outset. So there's going to be many steps involved in completing the dissertation or doctoral project study and getting it approved. You can't be looking to the last step at the beginning. Look at the beginning steps.
All right, shoot, everyone. Looks like we lost Vanya's audio again. Oh, but I think she might be back. Are you there, Vanya?
Okay, I'm back.
Right.
My apologies. Yeah, they're sending me a new computer.
We'll hope that Vanya's able to.
But apparently it's clearly not here in time. So we'll keep going. And the thing is, yeah, okay, so we'll just keep going for now. So obtain all necessary approvals before moving on to the next stage. Just keep that in mind. There are approvals before moving on to the next stage. And so you're not done after you get after you get your chair saying yes. Then it goes to the second committee member, but then they have to say yes. Then there's the URR. I've talked with a lot of students who say, oh, the URR kicked it back. God, I'm just so deflated from that. I feel so defeated. And and the thing is the URR likely will kick it back. And And that's a good thing, because every time it gets kicked back to you, it means that someone has caught a hole and you're going to fill that hole. Okay, so don't see that back and forth as a negative experience. See it as the way that you are going to grow the most rigorous project that you possibly can. And know and use those approval requirements as the outline for your draft. Talk with your chair ahead of time to make sure that you know what is expected of you. Um, and then last, when you begin writing, be sure to use the appropriate document template. And we'll talk more about template in a little while. First and foremost, I want us to just kind of get through talking about the process a little bit more, and then we'll come back to talking about the template. But I did link it here, just in case you are like, she was talking about a template. I want to know more about that. It's linked there as well, but I will get back to talking about the template. All right, so writing a dissertation or doctoral project or study. You're going to work with faculty, you need to manage your schedule, and you have to use a writing process to your advantage. These are all things that we're going to talk about now. So my next question for you is, what strategies do you currently use to revise your own work? Do you have revision strategies currently? Do you think about revision? Grammarly, okay. Peers, so you have peers look at it, reading, writing out loud. Yep, it's a good one. Got more reading out loud. The DBA handbook is big, or a handbook, depending on what your program is. Feedback from colleagues who are ahead in the program. That can be really, really helpful. Yep, create outlines. That's a huge one. Grammarly and my wife, yeah, a significant other who can read it, or a friend or someone can be very helpful. Writing and then coming back to it the next day. Um, Yep, friends and colleagues. Okay, so we've got people reading. We've got people reading what various people have said about it, and then also using tools like Grammarly, etc. So, or the Writing Center, what have you. Have my eighth grader read it and change what she doesn't understand, right? Um, and a break, someone put in a break. Yes, these are all great. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving so that we can get through all this stuff due to my unfortunate issues over on this end. But yes, so good. I'm glad to hear that you do have some strategies going in. We're going to talk even more, and we're going to talk at in some ways a deeper level, because those strategies look like they're really good strategies. A lot of them good strategies for writing a paper, but sometimes revision strategies for writing a doctoral dissertation is going to look a little different. So before we even get into those strategies of the actual process of the words on the page, I want to talk strategies, just kind of mental strategies going into the process, okay? So the first is to remember certain things. First of all, that you're in charge, so the responsibility is yours. I hear this often. And this is a tricky one, moving from student to scholar, because on the one hand, you are being told you are either satisfactorily or unsatisfactorily moving through the program on a regular basis, term by term, right? So you may not feel like you are in charge, but you are the one that is in charge. The responsibility is yours, and seeking and seeking all your self-efficacy within you to make sure that you are using your voice when you need to use your voice, asking questions when you need to ask questions. Remember that your chairs are mentors and they're there to help you. They are the main person who puts up the hoop that you have to jump through, and you might have to jump through it a couple times, maybe a couple times, whatever. Point is, that chair is the mentor and is there to help you, and that is what they want to do. It is not about not wanting you to move forward. It is about wanting to see that you move forward such that they have confidence in your forward movement, right? So they are there to help. It might not always seem like it, especially if the mindset isn't there that they are literally there to help you. Remember, don't try to compare your progress to that of others. That's one of the best uh, bits of advice I ever got when I was completing my PhD. A lot of my colleagues did not, I had children during grad school, I had a full-time job. A lot of my colleagues were fresh out of college and did not have children and had parents still supporting them in some way, shape, or form. They, of course, moved much faster than me. And so I couldn't look over at that group. I had to look at what I could do. Annually, I would say, where was I a year ago? Where am I today? And I always had progressed, right? So you can do that monthly. Where was I a month ago? Where am I today? Compare yourself to yourself. And last is your self-motivation, your ability to be proactive, your ability to be respectful. Receiving critique can be hard, and being the biggest advocate for your work. You sometimes may want to defend something and have more of a conversation. Your chair or mentor may say, no, I don't like it. And then you have to respectfully say, okay, I'm going to let that go and I'm going to trust the process and the chair. But you do get to be an advocate for your work. So those are some things to remember, some strategies, some mental strategies to remember going in. So what I've said at the beginning, writing a capstone study is like training for a marathon. It requires practice and preparation and self-discipline and consistency. It is not, when I was, no, I'm not going to tell a story because there's no time now, but it is a long slog, okay? And it is a slog, and it's not always going to feel good, honestly. I don't think anybody just breezes through the dissertating process. It is hard, and there's these mental strategies as well as proactively taking care of yourself as you move through this process. These are all important strategies that need to also come into play as you do this second half of the process. That's going to earn you the title of doctor, right? So here's some tips on working with faculty, some strategies on working with faculty. Number one is communicating effectively. And I know that when I was working on mine, I didn't come from academia, and so I did not understand the culture of academia. I didn't know how to work with faculty, and I didn't know that I was in charge of communicating with them. So the first thing I would say is actually the second bullet point here, which in the future I might move up, is schedule regular meetings and check-ins. You are not bothering them. That is their job to help you. And so you get to say, I want to meet with you regularly and check in on my progress and talk about things, and go with a list of those things which you still need to talk about. If you're having a hard time summarizing the conceptual framework that you have chosen, have that be part of the meeting. Check in. I'm having a hard time. What do you think? Let's just focus on this one section. Can we have a discussion? Those kinds of things. You get to set the agenda to a certain extent. Your chair will have ideas too, and of course let them in. But find ways to communicate effectively with that faculty. Find a communication style and schedule that works for all involved. So it's going to be different for every chair. And for you, right? Some are working full time, some are working full time at odd hours, some are working triple time. Who knows? But the thing is seek information from your chair. What would you prefer? And know what you need and want. I want to talk to you every other week, and just let you know where I'm at, etc. And how is that going to work? And email. Let's say email is best for you. Great. Let's say you would prefer a phone conversation. Ask for that phone conversation, right? Find a communication style that works for all involved, including you. Set deadlines and goals. Deadlines and goals are hard to set. You can't say, I'm going to finish this prospectus, because there's so many steps to the prospectus. And so breaking down those each stage to, I'm going to write a draft of the prospectus by in 2 weeks. You could have that as a goal. I'm going to write a draft. And then, but you can't say I'm going to finish the prospectus in 2 weeks, because that's out of your control. There are plenty of people that are going to look at it and give you comments. And so when you set deadlines and goals, definitely build in some revision time, or a lot of revision time. Be clear and specific when you ask for feedback, and start learning how your chair responds to your writing, as well. And if you need to ask for help in understanding how they're responding to your feedback, say in track changes, write it out. Say, what does this mean? And how do you have recommendations for how I can deal with this comment, or something like that? Be intentional about when you ask for help, and stay positive and respectful. Never wait longer than 2 weeks. I guess, there is a 2 week um, or a 2 week section built in to being able to respond, but at the same time, wait a week and a half. Hey, how's it going? Are you going to get to it? Don't ever wait more than 2 weeks, because that means likely, if it goes to 2 weeks, that means that likely, with 20 other students, everyone needing something, maybe yours isn't totally on top anymore, your email or whatever. So be intentional about when you ask for help, and say, wait, I need help, and I need help now. Can you help me now? What works for you? That kind of stuff. Stay positive and respectful, of course. Working with faculty. This is a big one. Interpreting feedback. Different faculty have different approaches. And so you're going to get conflicting feedback from time to time, and that's going to feel incredibly frustrating. What I do when that happens is I close my computer and I take a day or two, and I just let that frustration be. And eventually it will dissipate, and I can open it back up and go back to the different to the feedback. Also, keep in mind, criticism is not the same as rejection. None of this is about rejection. You've gotten to this point. You've earned your place at this moment. And so you are going to get criticism on your writing going forward. That is not criticism of your brain. That's not criticism of your idea. That is saying there are holes in this document still, and you need to address them. And that's all that it is. And so once you start transitioning from, it's not like, oh, I'm getting an F or whatever, you're not. If someone's saying you're not listening to me, then it becomes time to say, okay, what do they need me to hear? Again, this element of self-efficacy is incredibly important in this process. But keep this in mind. I've made it a different color. Criticism is not the same as rejection. You will get criticism. You need criticism. You will thrive on criticism. You will get better due to that criticism. Criticism is, for better or for worse, what academia is built on, and how we get better and better. And with that criticism comes revision. It's a big part of the process, a big part of the process. So you're not going to write it once and get it approved. It's just not going to happen. And if it does, send me an email, because I'll be like, holy cow. And then we'll go to Disneyland or something. But no, we won't. But not right now with COVID. But revision is a big part of the process. And keep that in mind. You will be doing a lot of revising. Manage your schedule. These are more strategies, okay? So remember, I asked, what kind of revision strategies do you have? And there were a lot of very specific strategies to the actual looking at the writing that's on the paper. But all of these pieces that I'm bringing in are also part of the writing strategies that need to come in and organize this process going forward. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's a bigger process now, and so your strategies are not just about that tangible, how do I deal with that document, but your approach to it in a holistic way. So manage your schedule. You've got to, and this is going to be different for everyone based on your life circumstances, right? But how can you provide yourself structure? We do recommend setting a schedule and dedicating time to work on your study daily, every other day, whatever works for you. It's easier if you stay in it, just pedagogically, it's easier if you stay in your material daily or on a very regular schedule. But some people, they have the weekends and that's what they've got. And so then, find a way, find a schedule, dedicate the time to work on the study. Preserve your personal time and allow yourself breaks. Build that into your plan, because the more, just because it is a long, it's a long period of time. I mean, and you will need personal time. You will need to allow yourself breaks. It feels really good to finish. And all of a sudden, I remember walking with my kids at the park afterwards, and I was like, I don't have to be thinking about anything other than my kids right now. That's amazing. But preserve your personal time and allow yourself breaks while you're in the process as much as possible. Set realistic bite-sized goals and stick to them. Bite-sized goals are, like I said, ones that you have control over. You don't have control over when someone's going to return something to you. And so you can aim, what do you hope to get out of a term? What do you hope to get out of a year? But you don't have much control over that. What you have control over is that thing that you have in front of you. If you're writing a literature review, your bite-sized goal might not right now might be to write an outline for the literature review. That's a bite-sized goal. Write one section of the outline for that lit review. That's a bite-sized goal. And last, to provide structure, find ways to be accountable to other people, such as a writing group with your peers. Sometimes that can help. People mention peers. It can be to your chair, even like if you have regular meetings with your chair that you want to, you can always say, I want to have this much done by the next time we meet. And that's another way to stay accountable to other people. But oftentimes to get that accountability piece in, that's important. Managing your schedule, work backwards from the goal then. Okay, so if you say, I want to finish my lit review by the end of this term, you can't just write up until the day before the end of the term, right? And you all know this, but I'm going to say it anyways. You have to build in getting it to your chair, getting their comments, which will take a week or more, and then dealing with their comments and writing another version. So perhaps you could say, so work backwards from your goal, build in that revision time, build in time for other people to look at your work, and then all of a sudden it becomes, and then figure out what can you do when your lit review, your chapter 2 or whatever lit review is off to your chair. What can you be working on while you wait for those comments back? So you don't have, so you're constantly doing something. Maybe you're taking some time off, or maybe you're working on a different part of the project, but work backwards from a goal. Goals should be in your control. Complete a draft by the end of the month. Can't be, it's going to be approved because you aren't in charge of approve. You're in charge of writing a draft. That's what you're in charge of. Build in revision time for sure. I've already said that. And for bigger goals like approve prospectus by December 2020, build in time for your committee to review, as well as time for multiple revisions. And then if you're done earlier than December 2020, great. But build in a lot of time for revisions and review. And maintain flexibility because you are not wholly in charge of that goal. So if you have a goal and then you're really, really tightly holding to it, that's just going to increase your level of frustration. And this is a frustrating process. So the more you can be realistic and reduce your frustration as you move through this process, the less baggage you have to bring with you to your next goal or to the next term or whatever. So maintain that flexibility. Adapt your writing process. This is a big one. Beware of yourself as a reader, researcher, and writer. And because this is a writing center, I'm going to focus on writer right here. If you are writing your prospectus or you are still in coursework, I'm going to, in second, show you a bunch of resources. And when I get to paper review, I want you to make note, maybe click on it, get it on your computer immediately, and get a paper to the writing center to be reviewed. Get a paper review. You can get a paper review up through your prospectus. And what that paper review does is someone is going to look at your writing and say, you're good at this, and you know what, you need to work on this. And by knowing who you are as a writer, you can then address those issues before you send it off to people to write. Being aware of yourself as a writer is incredibly important. So that paper review link is going to be incredibly important, and I'll point that out when we get there. It's good to experiment with the time of day, environment, and all of those things with writing. And there are plenty of just do a Google search online, writing your dissertation, and look and see what other people have found has worked for them. Writing a dissertation with 2 kids under the age of 3, for example, is going to, maybe there's going to be some people out there who have written blogs on what they've done or something like that. So find what works for you as far as writing goes. And definitely, as much as possible, use software and data management to help you. People mentioned Grammarly. Grammarly is a good source. Also, something like Zotero, which is going to help you hold on to all your citations efficiently. Things like that. Take the time to dive into those things and learn about them. Because if you take an hour or two now to learn about Zotero or to learn about whatever it is that you want to learn about, the writing in the template, for example, we have videos on that. I'll talk about that in a second. If you take the hour or two to really learn that software or that data management system, now you're going to save yourself weeks at the end. I kid you not. So keep that in mind. Invest now. Invest now. And all of it is part of the writing process. Learning about all these different things that you can use to help you with this process, that's part of your writing process now. Definitely redefine writing. You're not just finishing, you're developing ideas. Be ready to change course. Lots of people change course 2-3 times as they're writing their prospectus and their proposal, but save everything and organize your drafts. I like to use a naming convention, my last name, first initial, what it is I'm working on, and then the date, so I can easily find what it is that I think I want from an earlier draft. And then keep track of your notes and research as well. I do so with Word documents these days. Another bit of strategy to think about: adapting your writing process, organizing your study. Use the requirements in your program's checklist or rubric. The dissertation checklist, and this is for dissertators, but other programs have a checklist as well. Go to that checklist, because that checklist is what your committee is going to look at. Have they written the problem statement, and does their problem statement include these things? Well, if you have gone to the checklist, and I've got a link for you eventually, if you've gone to the checklist, then you can say to yourself, does my problem statement do all these things that that the checklist says it's supposed to do? And so you can be one step ahead of the game, right? So use those checklists or rubric, depending on what your program talks about it. Your chair can guide you to whatever it is you need to have, so that you can be writing based on how you will eventually be evaluated. And the next thing is to keep things aligned. So if you wind up making a change in one section, go immediately to the other sections where that alignment occurs and make the changes there as well. That's probably one of the biggest things that we hear over and over is alignment, alignment, alignment. And alignment is hard. And we have these big ideas, and then when it comes to the data that we can get, our questions change, and so then our big ideas change, but then the data changes, and so this alignment piece is a struggle. It can be a real struggle. So keep that in mind, but keep things aligned. When you do revise your study, more strategies. Think about the overall structure and organization, not just grammar and APA. That is a big one for me as well. Structure and organization is actually more important than grammar and APA, to be completely honest, because grammar and APA can be dealt with really quickly, but overall structure and organization cannot. That means that you should be writing from an outline. Say you're writing your literature review. We have a webinar on writing the lit review. Go check out that webinar. It's going to teach you how to write that, how to conceptualize the lit review, and how to make an outline before you get to writing. Because if you just start writing, there's no structure, there's no organization. So think about that structure and organization going forward. I know you've all most likely heard of the meal plan: main point, evidence, analysis, and lead out. I generally call it the MIA plan because I leave off the lead out sometimes, but get to know your meal plan. If you write something, main point, so let's say you have something that you've written right now. Go to it later today and look at one paragraph and one paragraph only and say, what is the main point? Is it at the top? And is it clear? And then look at the rest of the sentences that follow it. Is the rest evidence or supporting sentences that somehow are pulling or are addressing that main point? And then last, try reading passages aloud, not last. So that meal plan is incredibly important. Got link for it below. Don't worry about it. Try reading passages aloud. Take brief breaks between drafts. Write how you write. Keep that in mind always. You cannot edit what you haven't written, and you will be doing a lot of editing. But you cannot edit what you haven't written. So make sure you just write how you write, and then you can go back and edit afterwards. And then, of course, here's the link to the meal plan down here. Every paragraph should have one and only one main point. More strategies for adapting your writing process. Here's some summary on what I've just said. I'm going to move forward and not give the summary right now. Keep in mind, you all should hopefully have downloaded these slides so you can take them with you. The last thing I wanted to talk about is our writing resources. You are not alone in this process, and the Writing Center is here to help. First of all, we have our form and style and editing resources for proposal going forward. Prior to proposal, while you're writing prospectus or still finishing classes, we also have Writing Center help for you as well. And then there are other centers and places where you can build skills that you need. If, let's say, you don't have a skill in a certain area, like using Word. There are plenty of people who just haven't had to use Word, and so they don't know how to use Word. Well, the Academic Skills Center has short courses or even tutorials online for you to learn how to use Word. Again, it's about self-efficacy. It's about you saying, what do you know? What do you need to know to get you to where you want to be? Well, we've got resources. Let's just touch on them briefly, and then keep in mind that there's that resources file in the pod down below that you can also. It's just a two-pager, just with like lots of hyperlinks, so you can get all those resources. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about is once you are a doctoral capstone student, that means after your prospectus is approved, then this form and style page, we call it the form and style website, that's your home page for Writing Center. That's where you're going to find your program templates. I've hyperlinked all these as well. That's where you're going to find Capstone writing kits. Capstone writing kits include pre-proposal writing kits. So if you're pre-proposal, go click on that and go look at the kit we have compiled. It's just a kit of web pages that help get your brain going on information that you need to write to start writing the first parts of your capstone. We also have proposal writing kits. We have final study writing kits, etc. So take a look at that. We do have a form and style checklist. That's the checklist that editors use at the very end to make sure that you have completed or that you have followed form and style. That's not something that you necessarily want to look at maybe right away. That's something that you can look at, but know it's there. Know it's there because eventually someone's going to look at your document and say, this is what needs to happen now. Keep in mind, editors, you can talk to us once a week. We have live office hours on Thursdays. So come in and say, hey, I've got a question on APA, or hey, I've got a question on this, or whatever. You can come talk to us. We can't edit for you in those office hours. They're meant to be short question and answer, but they're also helpful. Smart guides are incredibly helpful. The next page shows you what the smart guide what the smart guides look like. And and then last, here's our editor email. You can write to us. We have a policy where we're going to respond to you as quickly as possible. And so that is your way to reach us quickly. Within 24 hours, we will write back to you. So let me show you what the smart guides look like. Smart guides are really important. This is a small document, but if you have it on your screen, you can make it a little bit bigger. If you go to this page, we have a bunch of 3 to 5 tutorials. They're picture heavy. They are like, first do this, then do this, on various elements of writing the capstone. These smart guides are amazing. So some of my favorites and some of the ones that might be helpful here is right there is the second one is a smart guide on creating a literature review outline. It's a brilliant 3-page document that says, do this, do this, do this, and boom, you've got an outline. Might not be your final outline, but it's the beginning outline. It's going to help you hone what you're going to look at. And then down here at the very bottom of this image, there's more smart guides than what I have here. You can scroll down further when you're on the web page, but is the smart guide on reverse outlining and using the meal plan. That's a big one if you want more information on using the meal plan and how to get those main point sentences solid. So I also wanted to point out here, remember I talked about paper reviews? If you are writing your prospectus or you're still in courses, this is the page for you, paper reviews. Do you see it's blue and it's hyperlinked under the Writing Center's webpage? There are more capstone webinars for writing. We have tried to cover everything for you. And so you're at a live one today, but this one, without all the technical difficulties, has happened for all the other areas like lit review and writing an abstract, et cetera, et cetera. So check out the webinars. They're all on the page. APA resources, Writing Center has a bunch of APA resources, and then here's the paper reviews. If you have not had a paper review, get one. You can have more than one. Learn who you are as a writer so you can start editing and anticipating what you need to edit after you do your writing. The links below are the Academic Skills Center. That's where you can get MS Word support. As well as they have doctoral writing workshops. They're fairly inexpensive. They're under $200. I think they're about 6 weeks long, and you can do a writing workshop specifically on writing the lit review if you're struggling with that. That's a way to hold yourself accountable and work with other people that are maybe struggling with the same thing, as well as faculty that can guide you in one piece of this process. So the Academic Skills Center has writing workshops for you. I did want to point out this website, and the main thing is in the bottom right hand or the bottom middle is go to the Doctoral Research Coach. That can help you create that timeline and set those goals that you need to set. But it's also a compilation of other resources, literature review resources, methodology, research, statistics, etc. So that's a nice landing center for you as well. I did want to just point out this page as well. These are non-writing resources, but very important. We talked about data and methods. Here's hyperlink for research quality, Center for Research Quality, as well as the IRB and Student for Research Administration. There's the hyperlink to the library. If you have not made an appointment with your librarian to learn how to do a literature review search, click on that, make an appointment with a librarian. Those appointments, they run out sometimes a couple of months. Make it now. Get an appointment with that librarian. Here's another link to the Academic Skills Center. And also there's something called Capstone Intensives that once you get into the process of writing your capstone, there are 5-day intensive programs where you fly somewhere and go to a hotel and sit with me or another editor like Megan, who's answering questions, and a bunch of faculty, and you just write for 5 days straight and get feedback. So these are resources for you that you possibly may want in the future. The last thing I wanted to point out is the Center for Research Quality's Developing Research Tool. Play with this. There's the link. This is what the web page looks like. Play with it because it's got all sorts of how to explore methodologies, how to identify a research problem, how do I establish a research design, all of these different radio buttons that you can kind of push on and just start playing with the concept. A lot of this is about experimentation and playing. I have this big idea. I have this question. What kind of data is out there that can help me answer that question? If that data doesn't answer that question, how can I tweak my question?
Thank you so much, Vanya, and thank you for all the help in the background, Megan, and Vanya for sticking with us through the computer issues. We all appreciate it.